Before we pour up the model, there are approximately 6 steps that we should take. The first is to trim the impression. Clearly this impression will need to be trimmed, and the objective is to be able to fit the impression evenly in between the upper and lower trays of the articulator. Here's one that's already been trimmed, so we could kind of use this. After trimming the impression, the second thing we should do is plan for what the model needs. Looking at this impression, it looks like there's a molar and premolar. On the other side, there's a premolar. So there are going to be three units in this one here. So both upper and lower are going to have prep dies. So basically, this also tells me that I will need to make use of the backstop pin. And since these are premolars, I should 2 premolars. I should probably use a stone-based system for the pins. So anyway, we'll get back to that. First thing to do right now is what we need to do is install the pin rack. The pin rack is an insert that allows us to use the metal pin on the Cbite Falcon articulator. Before we install this, what we need to do is we need to remove the bottom cover. Now, if I'm just going to do, let's say, this impression has the molar in the back there. That's the prep die and nothing else. So it'll just be just one side. All we'll need to do is on the master side, on the prep side, we're going to use a pin rack. That'll allow us to use a metal pin. On the other side, we won't need it. So in this case, what we need to do is we need to put super glue on 4 sides. It'll be on this side, the other side, and on the sides here on each side. I have marked on this tray approximately where the glue needs to go, where you see the black marks there. Now make sure it is not on the surface stabilizers, because if you get glue in here, stone is going to go on it and it's going to create an undercut and you're not going to be able to pull the stone out. And also, really important, make sure you don't apply the glue on the pin rack itself. If you put glue here on all 4 sides and then you insert it in here, that's going to force the glue to come up. It'll just ooze out the sides, and you don't want that either. So make sure you put it on the locations, on the areas that, and it's just a dab of glue. You don't need to put much. So let's do that now. The kind of glue you need to use is a medium viscosity. You don't want the light viscosity, because that's just going to run all over the place. And first test it out, so you squeeze a little bit and you know that you won't have the glue all over the place. So basically here we're going to put it right about there, and then in here we're going to put it right about there, and right about there, and right about there. As you can see, I even put a little bit there on the surface there, but that's okay, we can still wipe that off. So now I basically take the pin rack And notice that there, the orientation arrow right there, that signifies the front of the articulator. So now I just basically push that in place and push it all the way down until it doesn't go down any further. And that little bit of glue that we got there on the top, I mean, we can wipe that out, but wipe it off. But the key is to not get it on the sides, because the sides is going to be a problem. So basically, I can just remove that, and as long as it's nowhere else, we're good. Now, you can use the accelerator at this point if you need it to bond immediately, but in our case, we don't need to do that. Eventually, by the time I'm ready to get everything done, it would have already set on its own in just a couple of minutes. So again, the use of the accelerator is strictly optional. This one here, that back molar there, that's all I need to do. So this already tells me that I will make use of a backstop pin so I could get that stability. And since molar dies are large dies, all I need really is just to use the pin. Let's say if I put the pin right about here, and of course you got to mark it up and make sure you know where the pin is, and so you can match it up when you pour the stone. That would be a good location for it. And then I could, let's see, add another pin right about there. Now it depends. If I want to make this another die that I can take in and out easily, then I'm going to probably mark it right there. And then the next one is to have a die probably right about there. So when I section that, then I don't have to be taking this large die in and out, but if I have to, I can still do it. But anyway, once I've pretty much determined that, just push the die in normally. Don't jam it in, otherwise there'll be a problem in taking the dies in and out. It'll tend to stick because the pins were jammed in. So now I know that there's going to be a backstop pin, and once I know where that is, I'll be marking the articulator, so when I pour up the impression, I know exactly how to line them up. And make sure you mark it below where the stone is going to be, because a lot of times you're not going to be able to see the marks there if you have it all the way up here, because the stone will be covering it. All right, now let's talk about what's the criteria for having a stone base. As it is right now, because we've got that single unit crown or single unit molar, and it's a large die, it's not going to move. For example, all right, here's a good example here. This bottom side here consists mainly of the large dies. This here is the first molar and the second molar. And these dies are just large. They're not going to move. So I really don't need to pour stone in that opening there to create a stone base. Okay, but on the other side, I've got this one here is a canine. It's going to be a thinner die, and I probably want a little more stability in there. So I don't have any movement. As you can see, this has a stone base. So the large dies, you don't need it. Premolars, I would use it. It'd give you more stability. And of course a canine and the incisors. you won't need that if you're using the all stone, because obviously there's no pin, but the stone goes in, expands all the way, so you can have very, very thin dies and they don't move at all. Even on the full arch, this is the all stone, no pins, and the dies are extremely stable. Just push that out there. If I can grab it, it's on my gloves. So anyway, there are no stability issues with the all stone. But if you have a pin, it's best to have it. Okay, the question now is, when do we pour up the stone base? Okay, here's a model that is just half poured up. This one here, we poured up the master side first, and this is dealing with it's a single unit case, and it's a premolar. So in this case, we're going to create a stone base. This is already set. So rule of thumb is you always want to pour the stone base when the side has already set. You do not want to pour it up, put the pins, pour up the impression at one side, and while it's still setting, you pour stone in here. The reason why we don't recommend that is because you would be vibrating the stone in, and you don't really want to do that if this has not set yet. So rule of thumb, just wait till this is set. Alright, in this case this has set already. So what do? Now we're going to get ready to pour up the opposing side. In this case we do not use, it's an opposing side, there's no prep dies there that we need to deal with. So we're not even going to need a pin rack. This one here has a pin rack because we're using the dowel pin system for this one. So the opposing side will not need a pin rack. And the way this works basically is, let's assume we didn't need to pour a stone base here. So the way we would do this is we would pour up the impression and then pour stone in the opening, and when the stone is of the right consistency where it's stacking, you basically close the half, and always make sure you have enough stone here. So first, when you pour that up, it's still too runny, and you pour that up, and you kind of leave it like that. But when it starts to the consistency starts to firm up, then you can put more stone in here, more stone there, and then you close that. And then before it sets, you want to clean it with your fingers. Make sure you wet your fingers and clean it all around. So you want to remove all excess stone, and such as what was done here. Notice how this was cleaned out. So okay, but anyway, so because we are going to make this a stone base, what we're going to do is, before we pour stone in the impression, we're going to pour the stone in here first. So you vibrate the stone in there, bring it up till it's right about at the top or very close to it, and then here's a strip of boxing wax, and basically what you do is you put it right over that opening. Make sure you are able to cover this whole area, and then push it through the pins, and just push it enough so it's going to stick around the edges. And at that point, after you've poured the stone in, of course, you can turn it upside down, and the runny stone will not ooze out. So at that point, you're already good to take this to the stone vibrator, and with a spatula you're going to slowly fill in the impression, and at the same time this will stay in place. It's not going to run out. And this allows you to do the stone base. Now when it's set, it's just, it's easy to remove this. This will come off easily. Now don't push it too hard, because it just makes it harder for the wax to come out. But for the most part, it'll come out fairly easy. Now this is reusable, so you can use it multiple times. You're probably going to end up having multiple different pinholes there, but that's okay, because even though you have a little bit pinhole there, it's still too small for the wax to really ooze through it. Or you can kind of close it too by pushing it like that. So this is reusable. So this is a highly recommended technique. So you can do this all in one pour. Put the stone in there. You close it up. Prevent the wet stone from oozing out. Then you pour the stone into the impression. You pour it into the stone opening. You stack it up. You close it, and then you clean it before it completely sets. And at that point, we recommend that you let it sit this way. You don't want to have all this weight here when the stone hasn't completely set to be pushing down. So it's best to let it set this way. Okay, so this is going to be the majority of your cases where you're going to use the dowel pin. It's going to be a single unit case. But in the event that you have two cases, one in the bottom, one in the top, you can only do one side at a time. Let's just say this side you've done already, and you've poured this up. Don't vibrate stone until this has set. When that has set, then you could vibrate stone. Or if you could choose to use also buff stone, your regular stone base, and just pour it in. Don't even need to vibrate it. Just pour that in, and then wait till it sets. So anyway, that would be the technique on when to pour the stone base.